Hey everyone, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge. A homebrew Mass Effect Dungeons & Dragons game sounds like it would be loads of fun, unless the Dungeon Master recruits that guy into the party. To the story. No, you cannot blow a hole in the ship and kill the entire party. Submitted to the DnD Doge subreddit by Reddit user Some Welsh Guy. A few weeks ago, I decided to run a D&D campaign based in the Mass Effect universe. I made stats for all the races, rules for tech and biotics, Mass Effect's version of space magic, and a few weapons from all 8 of Mass Effect's weapon categories. I was pretty proud of all the homebrew that I'd managed to make for this campaign, and was eager to find some players to enjoy it. I made a couple posts on looking for game forums to advertise the campaign, and got a decent number of responses. Eventually, I settled on 5 players, one of which I probably should have booted during character creation. His first character idea was to play a Reaper, a literal Reaper. You know, the 2-kilometer living starships that can 1v1 entire fleets without taking damage. His argument was that by essentially being the party's ship, they would save money on repairs and stuff. His second idea was to play Commander Shepard, the literal main character of the games, who is dead by the time this campaign starts, as it's post-Mass Effect 3. He went through a few more blatantly overpowered character concepts before I finally talked him down to playing a Turian fighter. His backstory for this character was 2 whole sentences. He's a former soldier who worships the stars. He wants to find a home. Eventually, we come to session 0. The players all meet each other. Some background information is exchanged, rules are discussed, etc. I noticed that Turian was practically silent during the whole thing. His mic was not muted, as I checked a few times during the session. He just wasn't engaging with anyone. I figured, okay, well, a lot of people are quiet when they meet new people. That's normal enough, I naively thought. Eventually, we reach game night. I give the opening narration, explaining that it will be 3 days until they reach the nearest mass relay, and ask each player in turn to describe their character and tell us what they are doing during these few days of travel time. When I reach Turian, he doesn't bother describing his character. Instead, he simply says that he wants to detonate a grenade and blow a hole in the side of their starship. His reason? He worships space, so he wants to be outside. Obviously, I tell him no. He can't willingly destroy their ship, since it would kill the entire party and end the campaign right away. He tries to argue, saying that a good DM would find a way to make it work, and that I shouldn't say no, only, quote, yes and. When I refused to budge, he told me to go F myself and left the server. The remaining 4 players agreed to keep playing without him, and we had a pretty fun session, with the party exploring an abandoned colony full of hostile, unknown aliens. After the session, I found out that Turian had been messaging another player, the only woman in the party, trying to convince her to send him pictures of herself. She never did, and even blocked him when he started to get aggressive with his messages. Though it's always nice when the trash takes itself out, I suppose. Yeah, it seems like OP should have vetted their players a bit more. And like OP said, he should have kicked this dude just based off the headache that was character creation. I mean, him saying that he wanted to play a Reaper in Mass Effect is akin to someone wanting to play as Tiamat in D&D. That just wouldn't make any sense, and I wouldn't even be able to think of a way to make that balanced. Then he wanted to play as Shepard, because of course he did. To be honest, when he settled on his Turian character, I think he might have wanted to blow a hole in the party's ship as a form of getting back at OP and derailing things for not letting his first character ideas come through, as that whole, quote, He wants to be outside. Just sounds too stupid for anyone to legit want to roleplay that. And then, of course, he harasses the only female player of the group to top off that BS Sunday. But like OP said, at least the trash took itself out in this case, and the rest of the group was able to play the game without him. Let's get to the next post, where a dungeon master is just a dick. To the story. My first introduction to how bad D&D groups can get after a decade of playing. By Reddit user Optimal Collection 20. In my 10 years of being a forever DM and opportunist player, I got to see how badly things can get when players don't know how a good DM looks like. It all started a while back on WhatsApp. It was a group my brother and his girlfriend have for their friends, and one person asked there if anyone wants to play some D&D. They wanted to try DMing for the first time, so I jumped on that opportunity because I haven't played as a player in a while. Though, had I asked my brother about the DM though, I probably wouldn't have done so. It started quite normally. I was asked to join a Discord server and to make a character. Immediately, I went to a room called Questions for the DM and asked about the setting and everything else I could think of. Their response? There's a church. It's bad. Everybody is racist. You don't need to know more. That was strange, and immediately set off some alarm bells in my mind. But okay, I can work with that. I asked the DM if I could use one of my pre-made characters, a paladin who worked for the church, where he was abused and SA'd by some priests, but then ran away and made a deal with the devil. Basically, a paladin warlock multiclass. Since we started at level 2, it was possible from the start. He said that was okay. Then I asked about a session 0, and he responded, I and my closest friend already had it. Everyone else, tough luck. Which was another huge red flag, but I figured, okay, I'm deep enough just to see where this goes. I was then asked to re-roll all my stats, since the DM did not trust me. Okay, I get it. So I rolled with their server bot, and rolled quite well. Basically all 12, 13, 14, or 15s. Then, the DM immediately told me that they don't like my stats, and to lower them, so I have some below 10. Mind you, they enforced 4d6 drop the lowest, which statistically makes it unlikely to roll below 10. But I figure, okay, now I was just curious to see where this hole goes. So I lowered my stats and continued. Then, there was the last bit of conversation. I made the character fit the setting description that I was given and sent it to the DM. After a day of no communicating, they went off like a ballistic missile. They accused me of power gaming, even though I hadn't taken any offensive spells, but all roleplay based. They told me that I can't have feats at level 1 because only they can give out feats, even though I picked Variant Human, and once again, it was a roleplay based feat. But then, worst of all, I used the church in my backstory, even though I specifically asked them, and they said yes. They accused me of doing this behind their back, and overall, just trying to sabotage their game. And that was it. I never made it past that. I told them the most polite version of FU I could think of, pointed out that I did everything they wanted, and that this behavior is really not something I expect. And then they kicked me out of the server. Thank you for reading to the end of this long post. I'll part with you with a final thought. In this story, the biggest victims are the inexperienced players that got stuck with the DM and his friend. From what I found out, they forced them to pick races other than human, so they could be racist towards them, ran the campaign as a book, and boosted their own egos by punishing the players for nothing. And the players don't know that there's a better way to play the game, and likely think this is normal. And of course, the DM probably just supports that way of thinking. So yeah, they're gonna go through hell for a few months. But that's it. Thanks again for reading all of this. Hope I scared you a little. As someone who has had the luck of never facing this in my decade of playing, this was pretty eye-opening. When you read these stories, it's a lot different than being able to experience one for yourself. TLDR, beginner DM who probably never played in their life and their friend boost their egos by controlling and micromanaging player characters, and I get kicked out for complying with their BS. Well, as OP said, there were plenty of red flags from that DM that should have probably gotten OP out sooner, but OP's curiosity got the better of him. This DM just sounded like he wanted to use D&D as a way to have some power over his players, just to stroke his own ego. And I guess when OP finally gave a little pushback by stating that the DM had okayed his character after the DM blew up on him, that was just too much for the DM to handle, so he kicked OP. I have to agree with OP that the real victims here are the players that never played D&D before and have to deal with a power-hungry DM like this. Hopefully, the DM doesn't ruin the hobby for them entirely, and the players eventually find a new DM that isn't such a douchebag. Now, before we move on, Luna is coming to gather your likes. She is a very likable cat after all. But now, let's get to a post where a player accuses a dungeon master of trying to copy Critical Role. To the story. Player keeps accusing me of trying to copy Matt Mercer. By Reddit user RedHood101101. I have an odd situation that I'm not entirely sure how to handle. I have a player in my group that was online for a bit, but is now doing some sessions in person. They are a big Critical Role fan and always beg me to go watch episodes of it. I never have, because I'm not really a fan of watching people play D&D, but I won't yuck someone's yum. Now, we had our first session in person, and I was excited because I got to use supplies from my other hobby, tabletop wargaming, things like Warhammer and such. So, I have tons of minis and terrain that I've built, and such. I got to pull one out for the big fight. When my player saw my terrain, all they said was, "Oh, so you're just trying to copy Matt Mercer?" I explained that no, I built the terrain for my Warhammer games, to which I got, "So you have a craft room just like Matt Mercer does." The player was pretty huffy the rest of the session, and sort of dragged down the vibes. I don't know how to explain to someone that other people can have D&D terrain, and people can build stuff without trying to rip off other creators. TLDR, player keeps accusing me of trying to copy Matt Mercer when I do normal D&D things. Yeah, because Matt Mercer invented building terrain and making minis for D&D. I mean, it's not like people have been doing that since the 80s or anything. But seriously, what was up with this player? First, he keeps getting on OP's butt to watch Critical Role, which OP had no interest in. So you would think that they would have been thrilled when they saw that OP was using terrain and minis. But instead, he accuses OP of copying Matthew Mercer? That is just ridiculous. And if I was OP, I would have told that player that if he's that upset about the effort that OP was putting into the game, then he can just go watch his favorite actual play, instead of actually playing. But that is just me. What would you do if you were OP in this situation? But with that, let's get to a post where a Dungeons & Dragons group seems to turn on a player for seemingly no reason. To the story. The time my group doxed me. By Reddit user Steven. I don't really know what to title this, but I have read so many great stories here that I thought I would add my own into the mix. This all started at the end of COVID, where I was explaining to a friend that I finally wanted to give D&D a shot. After watching Stranger Things, and always loving the fantasy setting, I figured there's no time like now. He tells me he wanted to get into it as well, and he found a group online, and he wants me to join with him, as the DM is ex-military like he is. This was cool with me. I just wanted to play. This unfortunately falls through though, as I was in college at the time, and schedules didn't line up. The usual adulting stuff. Fast forward to a year later. That same friend says that he is going to DM his own game, and wants me to join. Hell yeah, I do. I finally had enough downtime where I could swing it. Now was my time to shine. I created a blood hunter named Steve Thunder. At the time, it was a dope name. In this campaign, now realizing it, this dude had a massive ego, and we were all there to basically watch him play with himself, or his other favorite character, the DM from the first campaign. Everything from railroading, punishing players for wanting to explore, poisoning characters if they didn't eat in an allotted time frame, I wish I was joking, and overall, it was just a horrible experience. But I looked past it, as this was my first time playing, and I didn't realize what any of these terms were. And he was my best friend. I just wanted to enjoy our hobbies together. The campaign eventually fell off, because everyone just got tired of it, and the story was going nowhere. During this time, I was finishing college and getting my degree. It was suggested by the first DM that we all get together in person to celebrate me graduating. I was super down with the idea, and everyone was on board as well. Since I live in Wisconsin, fairly close to the birthplace of D&D, I thought it would be a wonderful idea to take all of them to the house where it was all created, with a private tour of the house by the Gygax Memorial Fund as a thank you for them traveling to me. I even spoke to the head person about my friends hosting D&D games for future charity events, as they love to DM. That weekend was super fun. We had an amazing time, and we even got to play D&D in person for the first time. Everything was great, or so I thought. After all of them left to go back home, we went back to our usual games on Discord. My best friend was a DM again, and we picked up our campaign where we left off, but he gave us the option that if we wanted to play new characters, we could. I decided that I wanted to play something new, and decided to play an Oathbreaker Paladin Dragonborn named Crota. I'm a big Destiny fan. But I was being treated differently by 3 members of our group, one of them being my best friend, the DM. No matter what I tried doing in-game, there was always some sort of negation to my actions, no matter how mundane they were. I was even attacked and ran out of a village for, quote, standing too menacingly. I could go on and on with the harassment from these 3, but we'll narrow it down to just, they were very short with me, wouldn't speak with me, and even tried to kill my character to get me out of the game. I didn't really understand why, as we all just had an awesome time, I thought, and the other members did as well. Even my best friend's wife didn't understand the hostility. Some life things happened, where there was a major falling out, in which I was shown by the first DM a secret Discord server, where he and the other 2 members, one of them being my friend, were saying that they didn't want me in their group anymore, that they were going to bully me out of it, cancel me, and even post my personal information online if they had to. They went as far as saying that I faked the 4 years it took me to get my degree. They had screenshots of background checks on me, pictures of my house and address, my mother, my stepfather, and they even tried reaching out to ex-girlfriends and colleges to dig up information on me. Of course, they were confronted about it by me, and the only explanation I got was, "We just didn't want to play with you, but didn't know how to tell you." It's safe to say that those people are no longer in my life, to say the least. I am now a DM myself, and couldn't imagine treating my players like that. The other 3 members of our original group and I still talk and check up on each other, and one of them even plays in my game now. I don't know whatever happened to the 3 others, other than them moving across the country, and another seems to have removed their digital footprint completely. But at least D&D is a lot more enjoyable now than ever. I apologize for the long read. I have no idea if this is formatted correctly, or even considered a horror story to others. But I love that we all have these weird experiences around a game, rolling dice. I just hope someone out there gets enjoyment from reading my story, as I do yours. Well, this story was just confusing. The way OP wrote about these other players make them seem like psychos. I mean, if they wanted OP out of the group that bad, why not just tell them? Why go through all the trouble of trying to bully them out, and even going to the point of digging up information to, quote, cancel and dox OP? I think that there might be a lot of context missing here that would be needed to fully understand what happened. Because as it sounded, before this, everyone got along, to the point of all the players coming out to OP's place to celebrate them getting their degree. I wonder what could have happened to make those 3 players do all that. But whatever it was, I would say that it's still insane to get background checks and gather information on OP like they did. Though at least it sounds like OP is now playing with a new group and enjoying the game now. But man, talk about confusing. And speaking about things that are confusing, let's get to today's final post, where a dungeon master thinks he can reinvent leveling up in D&D. To the story. My dungeon master said he does not want to level up our party's player characters ever. By Reddit user BullyNGL. Our campaign started with level 3 characters 20 sessions ago. Since then, our characters have never leveled up. But why, you might ask? That's because our DM doesn't want to follow the regular level progression from the manual. Let me explain. He sometimes sends us a document with all the relevant events our party has participated in. For example, talking to the Mind Flayer, fighting the witch, or studying the gnome's grimoire. Participating in these events grants us 4 options from which we can choose, such as gain +1 proficiency in attack rolls, or learn a new spell, etc. Keep in mind that everyone more or less gets the same options, so the concept of class is completely abandoned. A warrior might learn sorcery, and a wizard might learn martial arts. Also, for my wizard player character, it is extremely complicated to learn the spells I want, because I don't get to choose them when I level up, and they are incredibly rare to find. When we use progression in this way, for example, my wizard could get sorcery points, or maybe the ability of a monster. The DM decides what we get as a consequence of our in-game experiences. I don't know what to say. The Dungeon Master is a friend, and he's one of the most creative people I have ever met. He has created many wonderful new races, and I really like the setting and the plot of the campaign. But this progression system? I really dislike it. I think it removes all the agency a player should have, so I'm considering abandoning the campaign. Well, no D&D is better than bad D&D, but as it sounds, OP liked everything else that this DM had to offer. I would suggest to OP that they talk to the DM and let him know how they feel about this progression system that he's concocted, especially if the other players feel the same way. Otherwise, how is he supposed to know that you all aren't digging this progression homebrew that he came up with, and would rather go back to normal leveling up? because I'm sure OP's DM would rather do that than lose any players. So just talk to your DM. So many problems in stories like these could be rectified by just communicating with each other. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope that your games remain horror story free. Until next time.